You're listening to Intelligent Medicine, a resource to help you take control of your health. We offer a balanced, objective analysis of all your health, wellness, and aging options, both conventional and alternative. Now you can take your engagement to the next level by joining FullScript. FullScript is my online dispensing platform that only offers curated, professional-grade supplement brands that I know and trust. Never counterfeit or expired, always stored and shipped correctly. Just go to drhoffmanstore.com for more information and to start your free FullScript account. Buying through FullScript offers fast, free shipping, optional refill reminders, a mobile-friendly site. It's safe, secure, and HIPAA compliant and offers world-class support. Just go to drhoffmanstore.com. You'll get access to the supplements and features you need to help you achieve your wellness goals, including my custom targeted protocols that combine the products I recommend to address specific needs, heart health, immune support, and much more. It's all at drhoffmanstore.com. drhoffmanstore.com. Welcome back to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hopp. I'm very excited to have one of my favorite guests on with me today, who's Dr. Aly Cohen. She's an integrative rheumatologist, but she's also an expert on how everyday toxins are harming us and particularly our immune systems. Because when it comes to integrative rheumatology, it is all about modulating the immune system. It's kind of Goldilocks immunity, not too hot, not too cold, just right. And that leads into a question because there are supplements out there that are frequently advertised as immune boosters. Immune booster. They will boost your immune system. They will increase your resistance. You know, if you're at the airport, they'll sell you something so that, you can take this effervescent tablet and add it to some water, and then you won't get sick on the plane. So the question arises, can you overstimulate your immune system by taking certain supplements, or is that a simplistic way of looking at the immune system?
Well, it's actually, you have to think about the patient themselves and what they're managing. So if you're a cancer patient undergoing chemotherapy, you want to be very, very careful about the supplements you choose, not just brands, not just quality, but the actual substances and what they do, right?
Yeah.
You don't want necessarily an antioxidant on board at the same time you're doing chemotherapy, because you're really you don't want to stimulate growth and development when you're trying to actually block
or radiation therapy, which actually works by creating pro-oxidants.
And free radicals and all those things.
Yeah.
So for sure. And then when you're talking about autoimmune diseases, it's just, again, everyone's specific and has different issues and components to this. So this is just a general statement. But you don't necessarily want to stimulate the immune system because it's misdirecting towards self anyway, right? You're talking about your body's immune system that actually is getting rerouted towards attacking itself, whatever tissue that may be, whatever disease that's part of, whether it's MS in the brain, whether it's rheumatoid in the joints and synovial lining. So the idea is you want to be very, I think, really informed. But I do take it to another level, and I will tell you which ones I talk about in the book. I have what's called human fertilizer, which I believe the human body is like a plant, as I mentioned.
You can't go wrong nutrients.
Correct. You can't go wrong. These are typically, now I would say you want to definitely discuss them if you are undergoing any kind of chemotherapy. If you have a bleeding disorder, you have to be careful certainly of omega-3 fish oil, because that can thin your blood a little bit. So I will tell you that the four that I believe are intrinsic to human health, human beings. You bleed red. I don't care politics. I don't care culture. I don't care religion. You bleed red. These are human being anthropologic type substances. So I always say people should be on a very clean, good multivitamin. And the multivitamin has gotten a lot of attention. A lot of people poo-poo it, saying it's expensive urine. I will wholeheartedly disagree with that, because a good multivitamin, especially when life is busy and you're not always having access to foods you like, or the quality of foods, or maybe even the foods are traveling to supermarkets and they lose nutritional value. That's another area that we get stuck with low nutritional values in our blood and when we test them. So a great multivitamin, which means no colors, no preservatives, no additives, well vetted for third-party testing. That's a really great way to add to your body from birth till death. And I will mention iodine being, and as I talk about,
interesting.
iodine being in that multivitamin at a very reasonable 150 micrograms, no
Hmm.
more, is something that people are not getting every day that actually protects the thyroid gland
Hmm.
and could be implicated in why we have so many thyroid conditions. It's really a nutritional deficiency. And iodine was added through public health measures in the US into bread and to table salt. No one's really eating a lot of bread. No one's really, using table salt. We're using Himalayan and sea salt. So again, that deficiency in a multi thought through and put into a multi can be very helpful. The second thing is vitamin D3, which we talked about, which is available to consumers, is only vitamin D3, but vitamin D2 is prescribed. Vitamin D3 is what you can get over the counter. To me, you want to take the amount that your body absorbs through a capsule. You can also get it liquid under the tongue, but whatever it takes to get your body to a level on blood testing that's around 60 to 80, where normal is around 30 to 100. I think it's
And
nanoliters. I'm not really
people's
sure.
requirements vary all over the board on that. And that's why I think it's important to ask for a test and to try and monitor your vitamin D. And unfortunately, insurance companies have taken the position that, oh, this is unnecessary. We can do cost containment. We could save so much money by not doing vitamin D testing. Penny
Right.
wise, pound foolish, I think.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's really interesting because I read all the Western literature as much as I read the integrative medicine literature.
Hmm.
So I see what all my colleagues and rheumatologists across the country
Yeah.
are reading. And there's such an emphasis over the last 20 years of vitamin D being so critical to
Yeah.
lupus and to MS. We've learned that in medical school, even. I mean, we know vitamin D is so critical to the human body. And yet, I can't tell you how many times I have a rheumatology patient that's coming to me from another rheumatologist, either for a second opinion or really just to start new and fresh. And no one has done a vitamin D level from that rheumatology office or even internal medicine for that matter. And these are not Medicare patients where you can have a cost involved. So these are just simply clinical decision making. And I'm always fascinated by that because I see what they read generally if they're reading. And that's not really emphasized. And it's such a simple test that can be used to their benefit, the patient's benefit. So I do think people should be tested,
Yeah.
once a year and try to work on it. If you do take vitamin D3, you might want to
Yeah.
get a blood level after, supplementing so you don't overshoot because you don't want to
Yeah.
affect the parathyroid gland.
Personal anecdote. My mother
Yeah.
had very crippling rheumatoid arthritis, and I was living on the East Coast, and she was living in California. And I said, as a medical nutritionist, I was asking her for a long time. I said, "Mom, get your doctor to test you for vitamin D." Well, she, when I spoke to her on the phone, she said, "Well, my doctor doesn't want to test me for vitamin D because it's not covered." I said, "Mom, I'll send you the $70 or whatever it's going to cost. Get the test." So finally, after a lot of back and forth, she got the test. Do you know what her vitamin D was with rheumatoid arthritis? Living
Yeah.
in Southern California, in one of the
Yeah.
sunniest parts of the country, 7.
And 7 is the number where you start to see things separate from rheumatoid. You start
Yep.
to see muscle aches,
Yep. Oh,
fatigue.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's like a whole
She had
host of
that.
things.
She had all
So,
that. Yeah. And
yeah,
and she and she ultimately broke a bone. Yeah.
yeah, and it affects bone for sure. And certainly rheumatoid patients have higher risk of osteoporosis just by the way the disease works. So, you need to be on top of those patients even more so. But it's interesting, people really rely on skin absorption, which I have found to not be reliable at all because vitamin D through the sun actually has to
Yeah.
go through a couple other manipulations through the
Sure.
kidney, the liver, and then you get a blood level. And oftentimes there's some, problem with getting D exposure from the sun
Older
really
patients don't synthesize as much, even on sun
right,
exposure. And I think,
right.
older people in general, sometimes, even in hot places, like in Arizona, they spend a lot of time inside. It's too hot to
And,
sit
and
out in the sun.
sunscreen.
Yeah.
Sunscreen blocks vitamin,
Sunscreen. They
right? And
tell
we
you to
want people to not get
cover
our
up that whole thing.
right,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
food quality has very low vitamin D. So when you think about all the, again, modern day humans compared to what we did anthropologically, we're indoors, we don't move, we eat too many calories, we eat bad calories, we shove a lot of stuff on our skin. There's a lot of stuff we love. And look, my hair's colored. If people could see me, they could see my color, my hair. My kids play lacrosse on turf. No, there's no perfection here. This is about like an 80-20 if you can do it, 70-30 for beginners, right? It's about progress. It's not perfection. And it's about moving through this journey of reducing exposures and nutrifying the body in a way that
Yeah.
you can handle so that you don't feel like you have to throw up
Yeah.
your hands and give
Not
up.
risk elimination, but risk mitigation. That's the best we can do. Yeah.
That's absolutely correct. And I think also there's a mental health component. You don't want to
Yes.
feel crazy about doing these changes. You want to see that each one of the changes you might implement is cost effective. It's not going to make you stressed out. And then you move on to the next thing. And that's kind of how
It's
I
not going to
lay
turn you
out.
into a social
Yeah.
pariah, like living in a trailer in Arizona, with no electromagnetic frequencies around you, that whole thing.
Right. And some people need to be there, by the way.
Yeah.
There are cases of people that are that sensitive, but for the most part, what you're describing is not going, being on the ledge. We want to do this in a way it's like a diet. You don't want it to be a diet. You want it to be part of your lifestyle. You want to, for instance, get rid of air fresheners if you don't need them. You want to cut back on cleaning products if you don't need them. We've been marketed up the yin yang. You want to start with vinegar or even look up EWG, Environmental Working Group. You can find a whole host of products that you don't have to make yourself, they vet them for safety. And so there's lots of free ways to do this process in a way that you're comfortable with. And that's kind of how I write my books like Detoxify, but also how I post. I want people to not be scared so much that they do nothing, right? It's about education and the doing and the solutions.
So we were talking about supplements, and of course, you
Yeah,
mentioned a multivitamin, vitamin D.
correct.
Couple of others that you wanted to
Yeah.
talk about?
Yeah. And not in any particular order, but probiotic,
Hmm.
if it's done well, is like a multi for your gut in the
Hmm.
way I look at it, because we're losing microbes that are healthy every day from stress, changes the pH of our gut. We're losing it if we're drinking, say, chlorinated drinking water or any kind of public tap water or even sometimes well water.
Right.
When you're traveling, you don't have access to all the things and bells and whistles you might have in your home. So a probiotic is really when it's done well, and I say this about all four supplements, and I kind of teach people how to do that well in terms of the brands and the quality. But it doesn't have to break the bank. You want to be thoughtful by the products that you use. Now, mind you, you can forget the probiotic capsule if you're going to eat, kimchi and sauerkraut and
Yeah.
really healthy probiotic rich foods, which is I always encourage. But I just, want make sure people are realistic. And so a probiotic, at least 20 billion with a B. It's not the 1 million in your orange juice or the 1 million in your yogurt. I think that's a lot of green marketing or health marketing that's really not helpful. Yeah, yogurts can be good for you and I think you should take it in, but it's not necessarily going to be enough to do a lot for the gut if that's your goal
Hmm.
with it, right? Beyond enjoyment, right? So I really want people to think about probiotic and liquid versus capsules. You want to be able to make sure you can travel with it and it doesn't need to be refrigerated. So that's another layer of understanding, how to, be consistent with these supplements. And then the last one is omega-3 fish oil,
Thank you.
which
I knew
you
you'd
like.
get to that.
I
I
know,
knew.
and I know you love this. This is
Right.
one of your biggies. And look, it's 99% of the time it's never done right. So I don't
Hmm.
even want people to buy junk, but you don't have to necessarily spend so much money, but you really want to look for a couple key issues. DHA plus EPA amount per serving, because that's the crab in a crab cake. In other words, that's the good real estate. You want the DHA and EPA to take up most of that serving, not other oils, not other omegas. So that's the marketing, is that they really try to sell you on omegas and they give you a big number, but it's not the DHA
Yeah, they'll
plus
mix it with like some flax oil or something like that, which is cheaper
right.
for them. And I'm not a
Right.
fan of those mixed products. I like the fish
Right.
oil.
And then you
Uh,
need to know how much to take for
yeah,
what your issues
yeah.
are. So, for instance, I'll give my kids, I have two teenage boys, and so I've been desperately trying to get them to take 1,000 of EPA plus DHA, which is it typically in a couple different capsules of different brands that I like that are clean and they look for PCBs and heavy metals and all that kind. So, not hard to find a couple really good brands
Hmm.
out there. And I talk about that in the book. But 2,000 might be someone like for me being old, who's just trying to prevent some stuff, right? And then 3 to 4,000 would be for someone who's really trying to reduce
Yeah, really trying
inflammation.
to take down the
Yeah,
inflammation. You
that's
can
where
push it,
those levels,
push it a
right?
little
And it
higher.
can be pricey at that price at
Yeah.
that point. So, again, you're paying for the concentration of EPA plus DHA and the cleanliness of that product.
So I wanted to ask, those are fundamentals. I think they're
Yeah.
non-controversial, but I wanted to get into some little more esoteric things. For inflammation, you have a lot of patients who have joint disease. That is what a rheumatologist does. Curcumin, are you a fan?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm a fan, but I will say this, there's been some interesting cases, even in the New England Journal of Medicine,
Hmm.
where people have
Liver.
been taking too much,
Yeah.
too much for too long. And it can really get people in trouble. And so I think, like everything that you would think of for medicine, are you taking it properly? What are your goals? Are there alternatives? Dr. Wild taught me this, and he does, this is his mantra, is that you really want to understand the same for supplements. You want to know why you're taking it. What are the contraindications? Does it affect any blood, any other medications? Do you personally have a reason to be cautious? Curcumin is a wonderful anti-inflammatory compound. The problem is it comes from areas of the world where we can't always monitor how
Yeah.
it's grown, the
Yeah.
soil quality, how the manufacturing
Lead,
process.
arsenic, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly, heavy metals and that kind of thing. So you want a company, if you're going to take it as a supplement versus taking it, from the store, and even that you have to be kind of conscious of, if it's just grown from the ground.
Turmeric. Yeah.
Yeah, turmeric and getting the curcumoids and is what they pull from that in terms of the active ingredients. But you really want to be thinking about the products and the brands that do that third-party testing.
Hmm.
And then you want to take an amount that's actually really quite reasonable, and you want to make sure, if you're taking it long term, that you get liver function tests among other tests, but
Yeah.
those are very basic to make sure you're not irritating the liver.
At your annual visit, that's usually included in the panel of tests that they perform. Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors an opportunity to share an important message with you. So here goes. Listen up. You know that feeling. You're exhausted, but your brain just won't quit. You're staring at the ceiling, watching the clock, dreading the morning. Here's something that actually helps. It's called Kyolic Specialty Series Sleep Mushrooms Plus. And it's unlike anything you've tried before. This isn't some chemical sleep aid that leaves you foggy and dragging the next day. This is a clean botanical formula built around certified organic reishi mushrooms grown on real farms, not in a lab, combined with valerian root to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer, L-theanine to quiet that racing mind, and Kyolic aged garlic extract, one of the most trusted wellness ingredients available for circulation and stress support. It's vegan, non-GMO, no gluten, no dairy, no artificial anything. Just 2 capsules, 2 hours before bed, and you wake up actually rested, not groggy, not out of it, just refreshed. Kyolic Sleep Mushrooms Plus from Wakanaga. Learn more about this and the entire Kyolic Mushrooms Plus line at kyolic.com. That's KYOLIC.com. Look for Kyolic at natural health stores nationwide and online. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make intelligent medicine a free resource to you, with great guests like Dr. Ailey Cohen. Is the bloom off the rose on glucosamine chondroitin? It was so popular in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I'm hearing less about it for joint health. I personally take glucosamine chondroitin, and I think that its main effectiveness is maybe preventive. I'm not sure that once you have severe joint problems, it's going to alleviate them.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I haven't used it in probably 20 years.
Okay.
And it's not so much because I just don't think the evidence is as strong as I would like it for. Now, I think there's better evidence when you're talking about, in terms of joint pain and osteoarthritis. You're really talking about some of the studies that are better, like turmeric with boswellia. I mean, curcumin with boswellia had some head-to-head studies with diclofenac and NSAIDs that really had nice outcomes. SAMe, samadenyl methyl, I can't even say it.
Acetylmethionine.
Yeah, I mean, that had some really nice, I have patients that's done well with that. That tends to be more of an expensive supplement when it comes to choices. But glucosamine and chondroitin, you have to be careful with people who've had, prostate cancer. There was some information about people who took too much when they had prostate cancer. I think that was a contraindication. And again, with nutraceuticals, you're getting stuff from, bovine, from cow, different animals that may not have been clean.
You have to have a reliable source.
Yeah, reliable third-party source to understand where those products are coming from. But to be honest with you, from an efficacy standpoint, I haven't been wowed by it, and I haven't had a reason to really incorporate it, at least from my own perspective.
And in a related vein, collagen is popular for supporting joint health. Yeah. And do you have a take on that, or is it similar to your view on glucosamine chondroitin?
Yeah, I mean, collagen to me, it degrades a lot of it in the gut,
Hmm.
as well as it would for food that has collagen, right? Eating chicken and
Hmm.
some of these other foods.
There are some
But
studies on the type 2 collagen, even in rheumatology, that
you might
shows.
know better than this. I'm happy to defer, but I have
Yeah,
not looked into this literature as much. I think, I just don't prescribe it as much as maybe others might. And again, I'm trying to find all the foods that might have these
hmm,
collagen and some of these other things
sure.
that substitute for having to pay for a supplement that is really, I tend to keep to those four because they're the hardest to really source well.
And so when it comes to diet, sometimes people say, "Oh, vegan diet is the solution for many of these autoimmune conditions. That's important." But other people say, "Oh, no, fasting or time restricted eating." Are these some things that you look at when you talk diet to patients with autoimmune conditions?
Well, to be honest, I look at a much broader set of questions. So,
Hmm.
for instance, I don't really look into any one diet. I think
Okay.
an anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet that is organic,
Can include
generally.
some animal protein. Yeah,
Oh,
right.
for sure. I think, I don't eat a lot of red meat, but then I made myself iron deficient
Mm.
anemic because I had such a narrow diet that I was humbled by my own silly choices
Yeah.
and I watched my iron plummet over 7 years.
Right. And you're
So
an
I think,
anthropologist, and you know that the human diet has been varied over time. There are very few societies that we can look back on that are pure vegan societies. It's very unusual.
yeah, and not only that, let's step back even further. Even in Detoxify, I have a food pyramid that actually at the bottom looks at food packaging, looks at
Mm.
water, and then looks at sort of this, the anti-inflammatory Dr. Weil kind of pyramid. I took that on and I added to it because I think we don't see that even our food packaging contributes largely to what
Hmm.
we're exposed to internally. So when we're talking about BPA in cans, not everyone can get away from cans, certainly socioeconomically, but guess what? Frozen USDA organic produce is probably even better than supermarket organic
Yeah.
produce
Hmm. Some people.
because the travel time is so long and just the way we manage modern day food systems. In addition, you're flash freezing those organic, which means less pesticides and chemicals, but you're flash freezing them, so the nutritional value is actually better than some of the more fresh, quote unquote, supermarket vegetables. And so it's weird because we didn't grow up that way, right? We always thought was fresh was best, and I certainly encourage that. If you have local farmers markets, we here in Princeton have a wonderful one like 2 or 3 times a week, but that's not all year round. And I want people to really embrace USDA organic produce because there's so many varieties in every big box store, Target, ShopRite. I mean, these are parts of Alabama and, all sorts of remote places. You can now access some of that. Plus the cost point, the price point is really much more reasonable than anything quote unquote fresh. So it's just another tool to manage.
What was weird is I recently was in New Zealand, and I visited a ranch there in the middle of nowhere. And it was this beautiful ranch, 10,000 acres. And they raise sheep on the ranch
Yeah.
and also cattle and deer. And I said, "Who was your biggest customer?" And I thought, well, probably China or Japan. They're in that same hemisphere, part of the world.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, our biggest customer is Costco US, for what's grass-fed organic meat, because in New Zealand the standards are different. There's no GMO. There's only one feedlot in all of New Zealand, and it's very small. Everything is grass-fed, antibiotic and hormone-free, and fed on natural grass and pasturage. So, that I think is the distinction between uh, industrial farm raised, eggs, meat, fish, poultry, uh, dairy, etc., that there's less in the way of chemicals
Yeah.
present."
Yeah, for sure. Listen, like I said, you take a human being that comes into this office, the first thing you have to establish is who are they? What are they doing? And where can I intervene at their level? Because you can't take someone who eats, McDonald's 6 times a week and say, here, I want you to go organic. This is this. It just blows their mind. So you really want to start with processed, unprocessed foods, where can we make an inroads into whole foods? Then you take it to another level of organic, not organic, and what's the best way to incorporate some of that into their lives where it becomes more natural. And then you start to get into other nuances, drinking water filters that are $300, right? Everyone can afford reverse osmosis nowadays, really. And it's much cheaper than even the carbon block pitchers that are not really as good in many ways. So I always like to say, where is this person? Let me meet them where they're at, because you don't want to shock them into so many changes that they're just like,
Yeah.
forget about it.
Analysis paralysis happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And so, in terms of what you're saying, like my eyes are lit up and I'm all excited. But 20 years ago, I was eating Cheese Whiz out of the bottle and Oreos. So, I would have looked at you like you're out of your mind.
Indeed. Well, okay. So remind us of what's coming up in the Smart Human conference that's going to be held on Saturday, April 25th, I believe, in your neck of the woods in New Jersey.
Oh. Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, look, I woke up one morning and I couldn't take it anymore. So I said, I'm going to pull people together. And so it's going to be the first inaugural The Smart Human, which is my brand on social media and everywhere else, the Smart Human Health Summit. And then I wanted flexibility. If this was a success, I wanted some flexibility in terms of the theme. So this year is going to be women's health. And I brought in, I didn't bring in, I was lucky enough and honored enough to get some of the people that I asked to say yes. And they're coming from around the country. This is 11. They're integrative medicine trained, most of them. They're specialists like cardiologists, neurology, 3 gynecologists, endocrinology, talking about thyroid health. Someone's coming, Ashley Koff, is talking
Which is
about
great. Yeah, she's fantastic.
dietitian. She's going to be talking about GLP-1s, how to maximize,
Wonderful. Yeah.
optimize them or not, even
That's
if
an
you don't
important
need
subject.
them.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's a
important.
very hot,
Yeah.
important topic done well. And then, of course, I'll be talking about environmental health and toxins. And I have, who else? Deborah Kopeikin, who's an incredible writer. She
Wait,
wrote a
all
book
that
called,
in one day?
oh, all in one day.
That's
Like
going to be
it's
an action-packed day.
yeah,
Wow.
and then there's a panel
Hmm.
that I wanted to have on the current state of women's health that has not only Deborah Kopeikin as a patient who wrote a book about her experience, but 2 gynecologists, because we need to hear these voices together
Hmm.
and really talking about this. So yeah, and Dr. Jennifer Ashton, who can forget Dr. Jennifer Ashton? She's coming in at the end of the day to talk about menopause and HRT, which is a subject that I'm actually in the midst of thinking about. So I think it's just a really well-rounded, certainly clinical. These women and men, Dr. Narayan, Chris Narayan's going to be there as well. They've had clinical experience for 20 to 30 years. So these aren't influencers on TikTok that are just, reading headlines. It was important to get the people that actually manage human beings routinely, and they have the most clinical pearls to offer, and that's what it is for direct to consumer information.
Can I just ask you, with all that you have going on, you're a mom, you have books that you're writing, and you have these seminars that you're putting together, and you're blogging and educating. You're on social media. Is there still an opportunity for patients to see you? Because I would recommend very highly that if you have a challenging autoimmune condition, perhaps you should get a second or a third opinion from an integrative rheumatologist, and it's worth the traveling time to get to see a unique physician like Dr. Ailey Cohen. Are you still accepting patients?
I am. Yeah, I mean, I do telemedicine for people who just want consulting because I
Okay.
don't have a license outside of New Jersey. But anyone who comes to see me physically, I'll be able to give them, not only, information, but also if they needed any testing or if they needed any medications, I'd be able to do that legally. So,
Right.
so I am taking new patients. I just, I'm happy to help people wherever
Right.
they are. They want to learn from social media, if they want to come in person. I just want to, offer up good information.
And short of coming in as a patient, in a more economic route is to go to your website, thesmarthuman.com. Is that correct? And,
Yes.
garner some of the pearls that are there, and, initiate some of these lifestyle changes, because it's going to make a difference, even if you have a challenging rheumatological condition or just an ordinary person who wants to optimize. Maybe you're feeling kind of, schleppy. You're going to be reinvigorated with some of these changes. So really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
You are a star in your field, and I wish you all the best success in the upcoming summer. I would attend, but I'm literally going to be on a plane that day. So,
well, virtual, you could see it on, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying, no, but
I don't know if the Wi-Fi is that good on the plane.
Well, to be honest with you, what people have asked me, because this is my first time doing this, is
I could check it. I could actually pick it up later. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you could buy a virtual ticket,
Yes.
$99, I think, virtually. And again, I'm going to offer up your audience a discount. I think 10% is what I've been giving to, various groups that are interested. But I will say that you can watch it for, I'm saying, about a 3-week period where you can just dabble. So I really encourage people to even, sit with friends, fill a room, enjoy at your own pace. But these sage clinicians and speakers are really, it's unique to have them all in one space.
And when it's virtual, you can kind of chunk it. You can go to the bathroom, you can make a sandwich, it's like,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, right. For sure. And that's meant to be so that this education gets out there. People teach their children, they teach their, coaches and educators and school systems. I want these folks to share what they know with the people so they get good health, good common sense health information.
Well, all the best to you. It's an ambitious undertaking, but you've assembled a great brain trust to talk about some of these important issues. So congratulations, Dr. Aly Cohen. It's a pleasure having you back on Intelligent Medicine, and we'll do a reprise soon to talk about some of the latest developments in integrative rheumatology and environmental health.
Yeah, happy to do it. And thank you again for sharing this information, my work, and everything with your community. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work you've done over the years as well.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app, and get new episodes automatically downloaded every weekday. And please give us a rating and review. It truly helps new people discover intelligent medicine. The Intelligent Medicine Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, please visit drhoffman.com and discover everything Intelligent Medicine has to offer, including there were many important reasons why I started my FullScript online supplement dispensary. I wanted to offer you the same curated professional-grade supplement brands that I use, the ones I know and trust. I also wanted to ensure that they weren't counterfeit or expired. Recently, I've been hearing more and more about counterfeit or expired products purchased from online retailers. With FullScript, you can be confident your supplements are genuine and they'll arrive with optimal freshness and potency. Also, buying through FullScript offers fast, free shipping, optional refill reminders, and a highly rated mobile app. It's safe, secure, HIPAA compliant, and offers world-class support. Go to drhoffmanstore.com for more information and to start your free FullScript account. You'll get access to the supplements and features you need to help you achieve your wellness goals, including my custom targeted protocols that combine the products I recommend to address specific needs, heart health, immune support, and much more. To get started, just go to drhoffmanstore.com, drhoffmanstore.com.